I do not want a human living in my backyard, especially not a man, and especially not a criminal man at that. Imagine how angry you feel when someone's dog poops on your yard. This human must have been going all around my backyard. That's a lot more risk of disease transmission than a dog. Yeah, I'm gonna be sleeping with one eye open and like these, right next to my bed. I'm not trying to die the first day of being a homeowner. What would you do in this situation? Let me paint the scene. You're buying your first house, sight unseen. You haven't visited it yet. You've been doing this all remotely. You fly in from across the country the night before closing to check to make sure that everything on your contingency list has been done. See it for the first time before signing the papers that makes it yours. You've run the numbers, everything looks good in a promising way. You start walking around the backyard, and in the very back corner, behind all the trees, there's a tent. And just outside the tent is a handwritten letter that looks like it's been rained on and is quite old that says, "It looks like somebody already left a note here." Hello? That's when you realize there's a squatter on the property and you're about to inherit this problem as soon as you sign the paperwork. Do you go through with it and actually buy the house? I did, because it was not enough to stop me from getting a good deal overall. One of the benefits of this property was that it's almost a half-acre lot. It's like 2 lots put together, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get it. It's quite a big yard, so you have to walk quite a bit, and there's wooded on one side that has like paths through it that deer like to sleep in, and it's quite cute. There's also woodchucks, raccoons, skunks, all sorts of animals call this backyard home. But I didn't want a human to call the backyard home. So if you're like me, this is probably not a situation you have any familiarity with at all, because who runs across people just pitching tents in their backyard and squatting on their property? Doesn't happen very often, hopefully. And it's kind of like every landlord's worst nightmare when they're starting a rental property business is they're like, oh, somebody can just say they're living there and not move, and I can't do anything about it, even if they don't pay for it. I called the non-emergency line because I just didn't know where my legal standing was with all this. I didn't know what I could do about it. And the non-emergency line told me that basically, as the owner, I have the right to reclaim my land, and whatever reclaim means. And they said basically I can just move the tent and throw it away and to call the police if he comes back. I wanted to give it a bit because I felt bad throwing away someone's home. So I put a new note on the tent. I was quite afraid to go near it because at no point did I know if somebody was sleeping in there or even dead in there. Okay, I'm leaving. I don't know if it's abandoned or what, but it's weird. There was like some blankets in there covering stuff. I'm not sure if it was belongings or something, but I just didn't want to go near the tent because that is scary. I went over to the neighbor's house because his tent was actually a little bit on her property line and mine as well in the back. So I was like, hey neighbor, nice to meet you. What do you want to do about this? And she was quite upset about it. She was suggesting we just throw away the tent right away and get rid of everything. I wanted to wait a bit because I felt bad throwing away someone's home. But with my neighbor's presence there, I felt braver to check it out and see if there was any clues of who this person might be. The tent was open and everything was wet, and it looks like it hadn't been visited in a while. Like somebody just left it there and disappeared. I left another note inside the tent, outside the tent, and waterproofed it and let them know that if they didn't remove their tent in 2 weeks that we would throw it out. 2 weeks came and went, and my neighbor was very eager to get rid of it, and she actually dragged it out to the curb herself. I had asked some other neighbors around me if they knew anything about it or if knew the guy who was living in the backyard at all. And the only thing that I got from some of the neighbors is that maybe the guy who was selling drugs out of this house that I just purchased that you can watch about in the first video on this series, maybe he had made a deal with this homeless person that they could pay him a small amount of money to live in the backyard. It didn't really sit right with me that the previous owner did not inform me about this before purchasing. I also learned my lesson that the realtor that I work with needs to be a lot more thorough and showing me everything up close, good quality pictures, and a serious walkthrough of the whole property. All that frustration with the owner not telling me about this problem, when I got to the signing, it kind of went away. He was like a 90-something-year-old man, so what could he do? So with the deed done, my land reclaimed, and the tent disposed of, I lived in total paranoia of the day that that person came back to look for their tent. And they did. And it turns out the reason why they had abandoned their tent was because they were in jail, which was just the cherry on top. So a few weeks later, I hear a loud banging on the downstairs unit at 4 a.m. I go outside to the balcony because I'm living in the upstairs unit, and there's a man. And he's banging on the door. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, where's my tent? I'm like, I don't know. I just moved in. Was it nice to lie? No. But I was generally scared for my own safety. And if he found out that I had disposed of his tent, if he was going to demand money, if he had a weapon, I didn't know. I was just like, I don't know. The guy, they sold the house, man. Just, I don't know. Although I did have empathy for a situation, I've learned throughout life that I have misplaced seeing the good in people 80% of the time or more, which comes to bite me in my back later on. All that subconscious empathy of me just filling out the storyline of how this poor man came to be homeless and living in a tent, and how it was somehow my responsibility to keep his belongings safe. All of that stuff, I had to logically reason that away because I cannot argue with the statistics of me being wrong about people so many times and them not being as innocent as I thought they might be. And I was right in some way, because he came back the next morning and I had started making friends with some of my neighbors because I wanted to be in a community where we kind of look out for each other. And I had told the guy across the street, who is now my property manager and owns a cleaning business, and he takes care of my Airbnb, and I'll put his business link in the description if you guys want any cleaning or property management services, because he's been reliable over the last 2.5 years. He kindly was a buffer for me and went to go talk to the guy who came back in the morning looking for his tent. And he was just like, man, you just got to get out of here. It is what it is. You know, the police are going to be called if you keep coming back here. And he found out that he actually was in prison that whole time, which is why he wasn't living in the tent. Prison for what? I do not know. I'm very curious to hear the public opinion about this. So let me know in the comments. If you're in my shoes, what would you have done in my situation? This is just one messy part of many of renovating this 100-year-old duplex into a profitable rental and Airbnb. So if you guys are curious what happens next, subscribe and check out my playlist.